Welcome to Navajo County Connection. I am your host, Dawnafe Whitesinger, County Supervisor for District 5, and today I'm doing solo interview, which will be fun. Today we have with us Mary Springer from Navajo County, who is the Emergency Management Director, and we also have Dennis Stern from Mesa Fire District. Today we're talking about something that's very important to our community and fire safety. And as we approach the summer season, a lot of us tend to have fire in the back of our mind, or at least being prepared for maybe a forest fire or a local fire in the event of how does that impact our community. We've all seen forest fires and their impact on our local community, so preparedness is very important. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll start with Mary. And Mary, can you tell us a little bit, I guess maybe just introduce yourself. I know that many people have seen you through the different shows that the county presents through Channel 4. But maybe for those who haven't seen you before, can you give an introduction?
Sure. Thank you for having me today, Supervisor Whitesinger. As you said, I'm Mary Springer. I'm the Navajo County Emergency Management Director, and I've had that job for a couple years now. I've been with the county 10 years, June 1st, so I'm coming up on my anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I've been involved with emergency management for the county for about 7 years. I was their finance section chief, and that's the person that takes care of all the accounting after the fire or after the emergency is over with. But in recent years, we started a group called the White Mountain Fire Restrictions Coordinating Group, and that's been a passion of mine along with many other agencies on the mountain. So we do a lot of outreach and a lot of coordination, trying to work together with other agencies to make sure that our communities are safe.
Great. Well, thank you, Mary. We're happy to have you.
Thanks.
And we also have Dennis here with us today. Dennis, can you give a small introduction about what you do and your community membership, maybe your family, just a little bit of background so people know who you are.
All right, thank you. Good morning also. I am Dennis Stern. I am a captain with Mesa Fire District. Approximately, or just over 21 years now in the fire service up here. Started with Lakeside, and within the last 9 months when we became Mesa Fire District, have continued over here. I normally work on one of the engines that are throughout the community here in Mesa, currently right now stationed in Sholo, in the downtown station. And between our fire duties and medical duties, that's our main job, and of course public education. We take a large part in that for fire safety, medical safety, community events. And that's basically what we're doing.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. I know it's important to our community to have, I guess, someone looking out for our best interests in public safety, so we appreciate that. We'll talk a little bit, you mentioned it, the White Mountain Fire Restriction Coordination Group. Can you talk a little bit about that and what it is and what it does?
Sure. About 3 years ago, the Forest Service, Apache County, Navajo County got together and talked about how we can better coordinate our efforts if and when we need to go into fire restrictions. And so out of that, 3 years ago, we have included the local fire agencies, the local law enforcement, the state. We even have the Weather Service on board. A lot of different agencies that join together to talk about whether or not we need to be in fire restrictions if the conditions are such that our communities are at risk. So we have a weekly telephone call that we all get on, talk about resources, talk about the forest conditions, talk about the weather, what resources are out there. And every week we all get together and say, you know, should we be there or shouldn't we? Fortunately for us this year, things are green, things are a little bit wetter. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that we're not in a drought situation, but the conditions aren't as such now that we should be in a fire restriction. So we're kind of lucky this year.
Yeah, we have been fortunate. We got a lot of nice rain, and you know, we still see the green grasses that haven't dried out. So that's fortunate for our community. When you're talking about, I guess, when you're meeting with that coordination group, what would be some of the indicators that you might change, I guess, what community members, when they should start paying attention?
Well, first of all, they should be paying attention always. And we talk about that. Like I said, we're still in a drought condition and things are still dry, but the humidity is up there because we've had recent rains. The grasses are growing right now. They're not dried and cured, but we have had fires and we've had unattended campfires. So we look at the relative humidity, we look at whether the resources are stretched. Like right now there is a fire that's down in the southern part of our state that's taking resources. If there are a lot of fires like that around the state, you know, the resources become really stretched and not available. So we look at the down fuels, we look at the upcoming weather and wind. So all those factors go into whether or not we should be in restriction.
Okay. So you take in a lot of factors. I could see why there are so many people who are part of the discussion. And you talked about fire safety, or not so much fire safety, but bringing up campfires, and that fires have started specifically because of that. What are the things that we should be doing as campfire, you know, having campers or citizens who are going out to recreate?
The things that we recommend is if they do go out, one, check to make sure that we're not in restrictions so they can legally have a fire. When they are out there, you know, we suggest that they clear the area around where they're going to have their fire. If they have a predetermined fire pit or a pre-constructed fire pit, clear the needles back away from them. You know, use good judgment, make sure the wind's not up. Have water with them so when they're done with the campfire, they can put the fire out. Not only just put water on it, but stir it around, put their hand down by it, or actually down into the ashes and make sure they're cool. A lot of the calls that we see come usually on the weekends, or you know, after the weekend. We see abandoned campfires. You know, we'll get 2 or 3 per shift, and it could be some of our local party spots that we know where the kids have been at, or it could be just out where, you know, it's a popular spot for the campers as well. And we'll usually be out there, you know, Sunday morning into Monday morning. You know, we'll get the calls for those, and they're just out there. They're smoldering. We've had a few that have escaped the ring that they've been in, and you know, just start a small little grass fire or brush fire next to it. Usually not hard to contain, but as we do get drier and the grasses cure out, as Mary was talking about, they do have potential to spread and become a problem for us.
Yeah, you know, part of being a citizen in the community is being a responsible citizen and
Correct.
recreating. You know, one of the things that we do is we carry a makeshift bucket. It's a plastic thing, and we can use this and carry water and try to make fire close to water, so we can, you know, put that out, and so it's not smoldering. And certainly, you know, sometimes you're just going out for a drive and you want to be able to build a fire, and don't forget the marshmallows. And you know, we want to enjoy our beautiful country, but we also want to make sure that we're doing that in a responsible way. And you bring up some good points, so I appreciate that.
And a lot of times that we see is it's the local citizens that find them for us. You know, the maybe visitors, they may be, like I said, the younger population, they go out and do it and leave it, but it's the local people that are out on their morning walk or their morning jog or hike or whatever it is, and they're the ones that find them and usually call them in for us.
That's great.
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah,
yes, it is.
Great responsibility from the citizens. Let's talk about a little bit about, you mentioned calling the right places or getting the right information if there are fire restrictions. Where do you call, or what do you do when you find out or want to find out if there are certain fire restrictions?
Some of the ones that we recommend is there's the 311 number that can be reached either by cell or by landline. There's also a website for them. Any of the local fire departments would be able to tell us or tell them if we're in restrictions. The local Forest Service office, the BIA office, any of the local agencies should be able to provide that information. And also keep in mind that those change depending on our weather conditions. You know, it could be we're allowing burning in the morning but not in the afternoon due to forecasted winds, or you know, some type of event where it may not be all day. But those are some of the local ones that we recommend for checking on.
Great. Well, thank you, Mary.
Yeah, the Northeast Arizona Public Information, which is 311. They also have a phone number that you can call in, and that's 928-333-3412. And that has public health information, emergency management information, and fire information.
Great. I know we'll provide a spot, I'm guessing on the website or here on the end of this clip, for more where you can get that information. So if you didn't get a chance to write that down when Mary said it, what do Navajo County residents need to know about fire safety this summer I think you talked a little bit about that, but are there things that we should be considering?
Well, there's a few things. One of the things that we saw early in the season was a lot of small little fires along the roadway, and that was from dragging chains. People that are towing vehicles that have safety chains that have come loose, and just the spark from those safety chains will start a fire on the side of the road. The fire that's currently ongoing in the southern part of the state, that was started from a blown out tire or a failure on a vehicle. And so people pull off into the dry grasses and they can start a fire there. The campfire safety, you know, if you can't put your hand in it after you've drowned it out and you shoveled it out, it's too hot. And you don't want to leave it like that. So you want to make sure, I think that's the failure. People don't bring enough water with them to properly drown it out. Mm-hmm. So bring the water, not just to drink, but to drown your campfire.
And again, it goes back to being a responsible citizen and recreating. So making sure you have water, being responsible when you're towing items. And, you know, I've heard, and I don't know, what about cigarette butts and these kinds of things? Is that something that, you know, we're concerned of, or does that create fire?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Throwing a cigarette
Yes.
butt out. And that's just common sense would be in the summertime you don't do that. Mm-hmm. But as far as fire restrictions, you're not allowed to smoke outside of your vehicle. And of course, we're not in the restrictions at this point, but we're early in the season because of the weather, and people need to be responsible with smoking materials, just as they would be responsible with campfires.
So you brought up another point. We're not in restriction with fire at this point, but if we were in restriction, what would be some of those things? You mentioned one that, you know, you're not allowed to smoke outside of your vehicle. What would be other things if we were in fire restriction?
Well, the nice thing with this fire restriction coordinating group, when we got together, we decided that we needed to be similar in our restrictions. So Navajo County, Apache County, and the Forest Service, we're all kind of in the same. We have levels of restrictions, stage 1 and stage 2, which in stage 1 you can still have a campfire, but it has to be in a prepared area, a designated area, but you have to smoke in your car. In stage 2, we don't want people having fires of any kind unless it's like an LP barbecue where you can turn it off. It has actual on and off switch. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the restrictions, and I think Candy Lupe from the PIO with the BIA said it best when she said fire knows no boundaries. It doesn't know what county it's in or whether it's on state or forest land. So, you know, we all have to be mindful that if we are in restrictions that we pay attention and do the right thing.
That's very true. And I think, I know Candy has done a great job of getting the information out to the public and being more fire-wise. How have we done that, and what is it that we're doing in partnering with other organizations to get the word out?
Some of the programs that we're doing right now is we're continuing our program of the Ready, Set, Go, or the Red Tag, Green Tag program. And what that is the firefighters, when they're on duty, will take their engine companies, they'll go out to predetermined areas, eventually covering the entire community, and they will actually do a survey, a site survey of people's property. And what we'll do is look to see how defendable that property would be in the event of a wildland fire. And it would not have to be a large forest fire like we've seen in the past. It could be something small that starts maybe in their neighbor's yard or just behind their property in the forest, or, you know, wherever it may be. So it's not always the large catastrophic fire that we're looking at. We're just looking at general fire safety or wildland fire safety for your structure and your property. And we'll go through and we'll talk with the residents on what they can do to improve the defendability of their property and of their houses and the structures on that property, such as cleaning the needles up that are down on the ground, cleaning the needles off the roof, not storing their wood piles underneath their decks, keeping their porches and their decks clean, not letting the leaf litter and the needles accumulate on them. So in the event that if an ember does land in those, it's not a receptive fuel bed. In other words, a fire will not start in those small areas. And like I said, we will go through and we'll talk with them, determine if it's a very savable property, which would be a green tag, or if it's a property that's going to need work done on it, a substantial amount of work, and that would be a red tag. And we will make suggestions to the property owner on what they can do to clean it up. and then we can come back and re-inspect it again, and possibly, hopefully, the end goal is to put a green tag on it. And then once we go through the community, what we do is we have a large mapping system that we'll put that into. So in the event of a large fire coming, we know where our problem areas are going to be for that incident coming up. We know we have, a large section of green properties or very defendable properties that are in front of the fire, or we know that, we have a lot of properties that are in danger, possibly red tagged, or we're going to have to take the appropriate actions on those. It'll help us determine, the extent of the fire, where it's going, how much of outside resources we're going to need to bring in to help defend those properties, and along those lines. It's a good forecasting tool for us.
What a great way to be proactive.
Yes.
To mitigate some of those future problems and better understand
Yes.
what the community is looking like. So that's a great service that
Right.
you
We're
provide.
actually in our third year of doing that now, and I know up in Pine Top and Lakeside we've started a little bit earlier, a couple years back, and moving forward in that. And Sholo is now very much part of that and working through that. Linden as well. So we're strong promoters of that program.
And I'm sure the community is pretty responsive. No one wants to be a victim of fire. And they certainly want to do their part in making sure that they can protect their home. And that leads to the next question. In the event that there is a fire, what should a person or a family do?
And here again, another part of that program that goes in conjunction with it was the Ready, Set, Go. It actually gives you a list of steps that you can take to prepare yourself before the incident actually happens, such as knowing where all your important documents are, getting them together in one spot that'd be easily portable for you. Family pictures, things of sentimental value, getting those together before an incident actually occurs. The next step would be when you are given that pre-evacuation notice, that you once again gather all that stuff. Some of the other things would be, your everyday things, your medications, possibly your health records, financial documents, making arrangements for where your animals may go if you can't transport them with you, whether that be livestock, horses, cats, dogs, all your pets and stuff like that. And then the third step is when you are actually evacuated, loading up where you're going to go to, knowing that evacuation route or where an evacuation center has been set up, and just once again having that knowledge and being prepared for it.
Great. Well, thank you. Mary, can you talk a little bit about the fire safety, I guess getting the information out, and how does the White Mountain Fire Restriction Coordination Group do that?
Sure. One of the things that we like to do during this season is get with the media. That's huge for us, because the media, whether it's radio, television, or news, print, they're our friends and partners in this, making sure the communities know what's going on, whether it's a Ready, Set, Go event that's going on, or a community awareness event, or a FireWise class. So we work very closely with the media, even this show that we're doing with you today, just trying to get the word out of what we're all about and be safe with fire, especially during this season. We had a media event in March where all the different local partners and even state partners got together, kind of a face-to-face. So, in the event of an emergency, we all know who we're working with and coordinating with, and exchanged phone numbers and email addresses, and what are you doing in your community. So just trying to get everybody prepared. We also use those big ADOT boards. We work with ADOT very closely, in this type of environment, saying, make sure you extinguish your campfire, or what level of restrictions we're in. And I think you've noticed on the local news in the Valley, they have been having a tremendous amount of information going out. And I think that's a result of knowing what we've been through in the past with wildfires and trying to prevent that and keep the green up here.
I think all of the efforts kind of speak to that whole message that, the fires know no boundaries, that we don't know when a fire will start or where it will start. But providing all of the background information or the coordination efforts is really important. And you can see the complexities of that, all the way from understanding the weather and every organization that's part of the conversation, to determining if there should be fire restriction or not. All of the outside organizations who do their parts, like Timber Mesa, and their efforts in providing communication to to community members, all the way to community members being responsible and making sure that they're fire prepared or fire ready by taking care of their yards and getting all of their documents and things organized. So you can tell it takes a great deal of effort for community members to be involved and organizations to be part of that conversation.
Well, you know, every year we hear, why don't they just close the forests? And that's just not the folks that are not responsible. Closing a forest wouldn't fix that. So it's really the education and the outreach and paying attention to what they should be doing. Making sure their campfires are drowned, making sure that they're fire safety or fire-wise with their homes. Those are the things that they need to be doing. You know, our economy is based on a lot of tourism, and just shutting a forest down during fire season doesn't fix somebody with bad behaviors.
That's very true. And our industry is based on tourism, and it would be, you know, we all like to go out and go for an evening fish or be able to go camping and roast marshmallows, or, you know, we all enjoy doing those things, and taking those things away, especially over summer, would be a difficult thing. So there's certainly many layers and complexities to think about. Are there any last comments or points that we should be making around this effort?
We could throw in there the websites for the local fire districts, also information for the citizens to figure out what restrictions we were in, obtaining burn permits for disposal of yard waste, and what the burn permit is entitled, or what it allows you to do when we're not in restrictions. Those can be obtained through the fire district websites. Stopping in at the fire stations, talking with the crews that are there, they can give you tips and hints and where we're at, and help keep you safe when you're out there.
Great. Well, we appreciate that. Mary?
Well, thanks. We really appreciate getting the word out. And the goal here is to keep our community safe, you know, keep the folks that come up and visit up here safe, and when they leave and they head back to the valley, we still have a nice place to live. So all the things that Dennis mentioned, you know, the different websites, they're all tools. And so we ask them to take the time out to know where you're at, know the restrictions, and be responsible.
Well, I certainly appreciate the organizations as a citizen of the community. You know, when I am looking to have a fire in my backyard, being responsible and calling the fire department to find out if we're in restrictions, knowing I have a responsibility as well, and that the organizations are doing their part, so I appreciate that. So with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you for joining us today. When you're out there recreating over the month of June, make sure that we're fire-wise, that we're paying attention, and that we're doing our part to be responsible and taking care of our local forests. So we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you.